Have you ever been through something and you can tell a distinctive difference in who you were before that thing happened and then who you are afterwards? And I'm not talking about like a phase or a certain period of life. I'm talking about one specific moment in time that you look at and you go, okay, everything changed. I can think of one in particular, and it actually happened. One of those moments happened on what was easily the scariest day of my entire life. Here's what happened. So several years ago, when my wife and I were living in Honduras, we lived in a place called Valle de Angeles, which was this beautiful town up in the mountains outside the capital city of Tegucigalpa. And we were helping a friend of ours start up a new nonprofit organization where she wanted to help orphans transition out of orphanages and help them with life skills and job skills and how to go to school or trade school or whatever they were, trying to do to get out of the system and into the real world. And then one day, just some random Tuesday, my wife had left that morning to go into Tegus to run errands and get groceries or something like that, and I was working from home, and she had been gone a while, and it was about a 30-minute drive down the mountain to get to the big city. But after a while, I don't know, it was maybe around lunchtime, and I got a phone call from her, and I pick up the phone, and on the other end is a man speaking Spanish very, very quickly. And at the time, I spoke pretty good Spanish, but he was talking so fast. It was just like one word after another all run together, and he was out of breath, and he was just super crazy and excited. And I'm picking up words. As he's talking, I'm picking out different individual words that he's saying, and the words were things like car, and highway, and accident, and wife, and dump truck. That one stood out. That's not a word I hear very often. And so this guy, he's just like, in Spanish, just talking through all these things, and I'm just like, oh, what is going on? And apparently, she was on the major highway. There's a big highway that goes around Tegus. It's called the Anillo. It's this big ring around the city. And as she was driving, and we had like a little SUV, and she was driving along, and this dump truck came onto the highway, and it was merging, and apparently just didn't see her at all. And as he came on, he decided to jump over multiple lanes of traffic to get into the far left lane. And as he did, he basically ran into her and slid her into the curb. And when the car hit the curb, it just flipped and just rolled over multiple times on the median all the way over into the other lane, into oncoming traffic, right? And thank God there weren't other cars coming. There was another dump truck on the way on the other side, and so luckily she didn't get hit on the other side, but she was upside down, and luckily, a bunch of people stopped and ran over and were able to basically kind of drag her out and get her off of the highway with all this oncoming traffic coming, 50, 60 miles an hour, and kind of pull her over into the grass, into the median. And then we're waiting on, emergency vehicles to show up. And then my wife asked one of the people that was there to help, hey, can you get my phone out of my purse and call my husband and let him know what's happened? And that's the guy I ended up talking to, a few moments later. And finally, he takes a moment to breathe. And I asked him, I was like, is my wife okay? And he said, oh, yeah, I think so. I was like, well, first of all, if you ever have an opportunity to give information like that, where somebody's loved one or whatever has been in an accident or had something happen to them, maybe lead off with if they're okay or not. Like, that's really good information to have before all the other information. Just a little life hack for you there. And so anyway, I said, well, hey, can you just give the phone to my wife? And he did. And I was like, hey, did you get hit by a dump truck? And she's like, yeah. And her voice is just shaking, and she's kind of half crying, half not, in this kind of crazy adrenaline rushed, state. And she's trying to tell me what happened. And eventually I'm like, okay, hey, just tell me where you are. Like, I'll come right now. I'll be there as soon as I can. Where are you? And she's trying to relay the information. She's looking around at landmarks and trying to figure out, okay, what street and exit and all this kind of stuff. But her voice is cracking and going in and out, and she's just not making a lot of sense. And I'm like, hey, I don't understand. And I'm asking questions like, is it this? Is it that? And eventually she gets a little bit frustrated with me not understanding her. And she says, look, get on the highway and find the upside down car. That's where I am. It's like, well, fair enough. And so I take off out of the house, and I get in my truck, and I just speed down the road, down the mountain as fast as I possibly can. And I remember just thinking the entire time, please be okay. And I'm just praying, like, yelling at God, just like, let my wife be fine, let everything be okay. And I'm just trying to will that into reality. And I remember just being so nervous, so anxious, so afraid that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with my wife was her yelling at me to find the upside down car. That was gonna be the last thing I ever heard her say, because I mean, I know lots of people over the years that have been in accidents and things have happened, and while the adrenaline was going, they seemed to be okay, but as soon as that wore off, they flatlined and they passed away, and things didn't go so well once their body kind of came down. And that's all I could think. It's like, what does tomorrow look like? What does an hour from now look like? Is my wife gonna be here? You know, did her kids see her for the last time this morning? And I was just, I was a mess. I was a wreck. And anyway, I got down to the highway. I think I made that 30-minute trip in like, I don't know, 9 or so minutes. And I get to the highway and I'm on it and just trying to figure out, okay, where is she? And then sure enough, when I found the upside down car, there was my wife there still sitting in the grass with some police officers and some bystanders that were, you know, had been trying to help. And I get off onto the shoulder and get out of my truck, run across several lanes of basically interstate, the Honduran equivalent of the interstate. And I get over there and it's like, hey, how are you? And she's still just kind of out of it. And we were waiting there for a little while, assuming that an ambulance would show up, because that's kind of how you expect things to work. But then asking one of the police officers, it's like, hey, is there an ambulance? Like, there's some like emergency EMT kind of people? And he's like, oh, no, you have to call them if you want them to come. It's like, y'all don't just call them? Like, that seems like it would be standard procedure. So anyway, fun fact about Honduras is if you've been in the wreck, you better call them yourself. But anyway, we figured out what to do with them, and we took off to the hospital. And luckily, the best hospital in the country was only about 15 minutes away. And so we go in there, go to the emergency room, tell the people what's going on. They immediately take her in to get an x-ray. The x-ray was about $45 as well. I remember that distinctly. I thought, oh, that's a lot cheaper than I thought it would be. But anyway, they run a bunch of tests. They do all sorts of things trying to figure out, you know, are you okay? And now at this point, the adrenaline has come down, and she seems to be like she's gonna be okay and gonna be all right. And you know, she can talk clearly and doesn't have a concussion or any symptoms or anything. There's no broken bones. Like you see this car, like you see what this looks like, and then this is after it was flipped over, and how much of just an absolute mangled mess it is. And the only thing that she had was a couple bruises across her sternum where the seatbelt had held her into place, and that was it. Nothing else. And I call that a miracle. I don't see how that is possible. How do you go from being in that car, in that situation, flipping over 3 or 4 times into the other lane of, you know, oncoming traffic, and to just be okay? But in the moment, I just remember being so relieved that all the scenarios and all the craziness that I had played out in my head on my way down the mountain didn't turn out to be true. It didn't turn out to be the case. And that's just being so thankful for that. But I've thought about that moment several times in my marriage, just in general, because you know how when you're in a relationship, you go through seasons, you go through times where you're kind of like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with this. I think I'd just rather be alone, or I'd rather go be with someone else, or, you know, this isn't working. And you kind of play out the scenarios, and a lot of those scenarios are very hopeful. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sure we could break up, we could get divorced, and I would immediately find someone else, or I would learn that being alone is just so much better. And you play out these ridiculous things in your head, and you know, everybody goes through that. And the cool thing about going through that crazy day, though, is that when those thoughts do creep in, when we've had an argument, when we're disagreeing about something, when the thoughts creep in of hey, you know, you'd probably be better on your own, you'd be better off in a different situation, I can think back to that moment going down the mountain and that memory of, I think it's very possible that I won't have my wife with me by the end of today. And that being a very real, visceral, emotional feeling. And it's been so valuable, a memory, a thought, several times in my marriage where things have been hard for all sorts of different reasons, to go back and go, yeah, but remember how bad it felt, how scared you were, how awful that thought was to not have her in your life. And so, as I was saying in the intro, you know, you have these moments where you can look at it and you go, okay, this is who I was before, and this is who I am afterwards. And that drive down the mountain was one of those big moments for me. And to just look at things from a bigger picture, it's this concept of, you know, there's a last time for everything. No matter what it is, good or bad, there will come a time when you don't get to do it again. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. My kids are growing up, And there will come a time where it's the last time my kid asks me to read them a story before bed. Like, I don't know when that's going to be. And it's not like it's going to tell me. Like, you know, it's not like my daughter's going to come to me and be like, hey, Dad, tonight's the last night you're ever going to read me a story. I'm never going to ask you again. You know, from now on, I'm just going to kind of push you away and want to be my own person and all that. Like, that moment's coming, and it's not going to be very obvious. So I've been thinking about that. There's going to come a time where it's the last sentence that I write. There's the last video that I make, a last story that I tell, or at least tell, you know, to a certain person, because, you know, life happens and things disappear, and I will eventually not be here either. There will come a time where it's the last time for me to be on this planet, and that could be a sad realization and kind of a sobering thought that makes you not want to get off the couch. It makes you just kind of want to be like, all right, this is overwhelming. I'm just not going to do anything. But I find a lot of hope in that. This idea that time is finite, that things do come to an end, because it makes the moments that we're actually in more valuable. Every time I get to read my daughter a story before bed, you know, it's more valuable, because there will come a time where it doesn't exist anymore. Every day I get to spend with my wife, my kids, my family, it's special, because it's not always going to be here. I'm not always going to be here. I'm not always going to have the ability to sit down and create something out of nothing. I'm not always going to be able to tell stories, and so each story I tell has that much more value. You know, when I'm gone, when I disappear into dust, the people I care about most are not gonna really care about the things that I accomplished. They're not really gonna care about the mountains that I climbed, the goals that I fulfilled. That's not gonna be, that'll be society. Like, other people will look back and go, oh wow, you know, this person, this is what he did, and he did that over there, and he could have done that better. Like, that's the conversation society will have. But the people that I care about, the people you care about most, what they're gonna think about is the relationship stuff, how you made them feel, how you cared about them, how you know, encouraged and breathed life into whatever they were doing. They're going to care about those things, and it's just something to realize and be intentional about, being aware of what really matters and who really matters, and, you know, keep the main thing the main thing. Because whenever I'm on my deathbed, I'm probably not going to wish I had spent more time making YouTube videos or designing games or writing books. I'm probably going to wish I had one more opportunity to read my kid a bedtime story. And even if I was the greatest author of all time and I wrote a book that completely changed the way people understand the English language, it wouldn't matter to my daughter. Honestly, that would be a cool little thing to tell her friends. But what she would remember, what she will remember, are the times that I spent with her and laughing with her and having fun and playing. And, you know, my son, he's not going to remember all the time that I spent filming videos or designing things or writing things. He's not going to care anything about that, but he will remember the times that we went outside and threw the baseball, or the times that I sat down and watched a cartoon with him, that we had a moment over a meal or something like that. That's what he's going to remember. That's what matters. And so my encouragement to you today is just to realize that there will always come a last time for everything. And so live intentionally. Be aware of that fact, and don't let it cripple you or make you depressed, but use it to your advantage, understanding the value of each moment that you have. And I know this video was a little more serious than normal, so if you need a little humor in your life, check out this video. I had a ton of fun putting it together. I think you'll enjoy it. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.